Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mike Armstrong podcast show. And this evening or afternoon in Boston, we're joined by Steve Markman, who is a speaker placement agent, has his own speaker placement agency in Boston, USA. And we met online via LinkedIn. And we're going to have a little chat about the speaker agency and business and entrepreneurship and whatever else we can cram into the call, really. So how are you doing today, Steve? You okay?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for coming on, and thanks for giving up your time to speak with me today. I'm sure you got lots on running a speaker placement agency, so thank you very much for joining me.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
Brilliant. So one of the places I usually like to start when I'm chatting with people is just a little bit about the COVID times. You know, just want to know a little bit about how has COVID been for you? Have you done any particular pivoting in your business? And you know, have you made any changes really because of the situation that we're in at the moment?
Sure. Hi, and yes, pivot is the word of the day, word of the year, word of 2020. And I have done that. I have taken a business that was largely created and developed through in-person workings and put a lot of it that is now virtual. As you know, Mike, most conferences and events, pretty much all of them, have gone completely virtual since March. That there was some thought that they would come back in the fall, and occasionally there is here in at least in the States, there's one or two foolhardy organizations that decide it's okay to have a meeting in person in the midst of a pandemic. But those are the rare, thankfully, the rare exception. And so what it has created, though, is a lot of speaking opportunities that didn't exist before. So what has happened is, I believe, from my observations and being in the industry for 35 years, that there are actually more speaking opportunities today, here we are in fall of 2020, than there were a year ago. And the reason for that is because there's less of an opportunity for people to reach out to each other in person, obviously. And so organizations are looking at the virtual meetings as a way to stay connected to their constituents, to their customers, to their members, and so forth. And so they are doing more meetings, but they're oftentimes shorter. But because there are more meetings, that means there are more speaking opportunities. They want to have speakers at these meetings. Some of them are pure networking. Some are a combination of networking and speaking. Some are just conferences, webinars. And so you might have, you know, anywhere from one speaker to 50 speakers over a 3-day period. And so what I did was to pivot and to help my business grow. I took what was an established training and coaching program that was a half-day in person, both for individuals and corporate staff, 2 different modules, if you will. And I took that and I made it 100% virtual. And I also created a shorter version for those who don't have the patience to listen to me for 4 hours or wanted something sort of quick, but yet very valuable to them. And so I created a 2-hour version of the 4-hour training program. And I'm talking to you, I'm with someone for 2 hours, and I teach them and train them in all the techniques, processes, and tricks of the trade in how to get speaking engagements, both the paid kind and the unpaid kind, primarily the unpaid kind, where people use it as a marketing tool, and we can get into that a little bit more. But that's been a major change, and it's worked out well for me in terms of helping businesses grow through speaking.
Yes, brilliant. So yes, I asked that question because I'm always interested in seeing what people have done to adapt and change. And like 250 people I've had on my podcast since June, and from around the world, and 99% of those have pivoted and changed. you get the odd entrepreneur who is stuck. They're not able to adapt to the situation. But most entrepreneurs by nature are good at adapting, and they're flexible. And so it's always good, I think, for people to learn, what sort of different techniques there are, or different ways of adapting to change that they can do in order to adapt to these situations as well. So thanks for sharing that. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into sort of speaking and then having the agency, the placement agency, etc.
Sure. I don't know if you want me to go back to when I was 5 years old, so I probably won't go that far back, but I'll tell you how I got into the speaker business. I was a management consultant for a number of years before that, and worked for Forbes magazine and did some, writing, mostly in writing and research in my career. And then I went to work for an outfit called the Conference Board, which is an international conference and research publishing organization serving the Fortune 1000 companies. And I was doing writing and research specifically in human resource management, people management. And my boss came into my office one day and said, I have a new job for you. And that is that as of tomorrow, you are now going to be in charge of our conferences, because Mitch, that was the guy that was doing it, has gotten sick. He took ill, and he's going to be out for a couple of months. So we need you to take his place and do that. I was in my late 20s, and I thought, okay, this is an opportunity to do something different. And I took that on. I didn't really have a choice, but I didn't know he was starting me on a 35-year career doing something completely different than what I had thought I was going to do. And so long story short was I rose up the corporate ladder with the conference board. I became the director of conferences of the department, and then I became head of their worldwide conference division. And saw that I really liked it. I developed techniques in conference development and how to get more people to come through a combination of better marketing and better speakers and structure of the conference and so forth. This was in the mid 1980s. And so then I went from there. I was recruited to go to work for Comdex, which was I say was because they don't exist anymore, but at its peak, it was the largest computer trade and conference in North America. It at its peak attracted 200,000 people to Las Vegas, where they had the meeting, and basically took over all of Las Vegas. And we're in all the hotels and the convention centers and so forth. And I did that, and then I worked for another conference organization. That was when I relocated from New York City, where I grew up, to Boston, where I am now. These companies were all both in Boston. And then in 1994, I had the privilege of losing my job through an acquisition of the company that I was working for, which I tell people it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't think so at the time, but it forced me to rethink my career, and I decided that I really wanted to be on my own. And so I started Markman Speaker Management to develop conferences. And then IBM, after a couple of years, IBM came to me, IBM Global Services, their consulting arm, and they said that they were not having good luck with their PR firm getting speaking engagements. They weren't interested in any paid speaking engagements. They just wanted to use speaking as a marketing, business development, building awareness, and boosting their brand so that people would think of IBM not just as a computer company, but as a service company where they could have consultants come in and help on any sort of not even non-technical issues like business management and so forth. So long story short was I did a pilot program for them to help them get speakers. It was just the other side of the business that I had been on for 15 years. Found that there was a lot of need for that kind of business, that even the PR firms that do that kind of work didn't really understand the nuances of how to get speaking engagements, these unpaid speaking engagements at industry conferences. And so I wound up with two types of clients: the companies and the individuals that wanted these kinds of speaking engagements on one hand, and then the public relations firms themselves who hire me to get speaking engagements for their clients who have asked them to do this, but they don't know how to do that. They're great at doing the media relations and book tours and everything else that they do.
Social media these days, social media as well.
Exactly. So back then when I started, there was, Facebook hadn't been invented yet. And so now that's exactly what they do. You're right, Mike, they spend most of their time actually doing social media and getting people on there. And so I don't do that part of it. I stick to the knitting. I specialize in speaking engagements, both for the unpaid kind as a marketing tool, and then I help and advise people who want to get into the business or grow their business of actually getting paid to speak. And I tell people, and they're a little surprised, that 95% of all speaking engagements, if you look at it on a worldwide basis, I believe, without a scientific study, are unpaid. And that's because a typical conference might have 50 or 60 people. They couldn't afford to stay in business if they paid all of those speakers. So they select one or two speakers in each event to be the keynote speaker or the luncheon speaker, and they do pay them. Sometimes $2,000 or $3,000, sometimes $200,000 if you're a former president of the United States. So it depends on, how many books you've written, your name brand and that sort of thing. And there's a whole lot of things that go into how to make it in that business. But it's, if you can do it, it's a great business. So I handle both sides, the paid and the unpaid. But for individuals, a lot of my clients are consultants. They are attorneys, they're accountants, they're sort of everyday people that people don't necessarily have a name of or don't recognize them, but they have something really good to say that will help people. They're not doing a sales pitch, but they're going to a conference where they're talking about trends in industry or technologies or anything that's not a product, pitch kind of thing. And there's so many opportunities for people out there. It's a great way to, develop marketing strategy by having your expertise known, whether you're an individual on your own or you're part of a company.
Yes, definitely. It's a great strategy, like you say, for all sorts of reasons. Even if it's just building up we call it a key person of influence. Just being seen as the person in that sector that knows what they're talking about by steering the conversation and the thought processes and the content and whatever for that sector. Being seen as the voice of that sector. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for anyone in any industry start leveraging themselves as the go-to person in that industry.
Exactly.
So do you do speaker placement for people outside of the US or just in the US at the moment?
Yes, I've been international right from the start when I started my business 26 years ago. IBM actually wanted to speak on a worldwide basis, that first client that I had. And so I was able to get them into conferences in London and Vienna, Shanghai, you name it. And then as the years went on, I had various clients who were headquartered in Europe. I had a couple of software companies in Europe in the last 5 years. One was based in Holland, and the other one was based in Germany. I've worked for a law firm that was headquartered in London, and actually pretty much had the market cornered on their particular expertise in the UK and in Europe, but they had no presence at all in the United States. So I helped them get speaking engagements here in the US.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so you can help people from the US break Europe and from Europe break America and
exactly
and vice versa. Yeah, depending on. And do you do a fair bit in Dubai then? I would imagine the Middle East.
So I have not really done much in the Middle East. I haven't necessarily made an effort to do that, and I absolutely could. I mean, there are conferences anywhere, and as I don't think the virtual is going away. By the way, I think that this is here to stay. And even when people, it's going to take a bit of time for people to end fears of travel, even after the vaccines. It may be a year or more. And so even when they do, I believe that people have spent companies and organizations have spent a lot of time figuring out how the heck to do this, right? So there's so many, it's a whole industry of, the software companies that are allowing this to happen. I'm waiting for any day now for, 16 companies to compete with Zoom. It's going to be a lot.
There's going to be a load of them. Yeah. And there's too much efficiency as well, for companies, time saving and cost saving and travel. And, so people are going to go back. There will be some big travel events, real world events, still going forward. Exactly. But most events will stay online.
Right, or there'll be a combination of the two, and with these hybrids that are going on now, there's a lot of that, and at least for the next year, I can reach out to an organization in Shanghai or Tokyo, and in a matter of seconds, I'm talking to somebody on Zoom. So it's created, as you said, you hit the nail on the head, greater efficiencies, and so it allows for people to do more speaking because they don't have to incur the expense of travel, and the organizer doesn't have to incur the expense. And there's, a lot of people turn down overseas events in the United States because of the time travel. They just don't want to spend the time, even if their expenses were covered by the organizer. So that goes away now with virtual. So it's a lot more opportunities for people to use it.
Yeah, definitely. And I work for a network and an events company that used to be based in Wales, and we used to do big expos and networking events and have speakers on at those events. We had like Grant Cardone and Lord Sugar at one of our expos in 2018. But that company couldn't do any real world events from March, so they pivoted to online, and they just completed their first global summit. It was just Wednesday to Friday. And they had 33 speakers on from around the world. A lot of them, the likes of Les Brown, Brian Tracy, Dr. John DiMartini, Sharon Lecter, Jarek Robbins, Tom Ziegler, loads of big speakers in the personal development world. And most of those speakers have said they're not going to go back to speak in the real world because of all the travel time, the hotels. They're not missing any of that. They can literally just switch their Zoom on, do an hour presentation or speech, get back to bed, or because some of these guys are in their 70s, they don't miss the travel at all. So those sort of speakers will want to travel, and probably the next wave, the next generation of younger speakers who are still prepared to do the travel and do the time and wake up in different hotel rooms not knowing what day of the week it is and what time it is. Those ones will probably take over that real world experience.
Exactly.
So obviously as a speaker placement agency, you obviously place speakers, but you do other things as well. Do you coach people on how to get speaking gigs and all the rest of that? Tell people a little bit more about the full array of services you offer in your agency.
Right. So I basically have three primary services. The first one is the training and coaching. And so what I do is I have a 2-hour version and a 4-hour version. They're both virtual, and we really get into the weeds, as they say. I very detailed, hands-on. The other one person is at their laptop. I'm on my laptop. I'll say, let's go to this URL and let's look at this conference, and I teach them the methodologies of how to identify and research different organizations that match up with their topic and with the audience that they want to speak to, which usually reflects or mirrors the type of customer or client that they have, because they're using this obviously as a way to generate leads, to develop business, to increase their brand name and get thought leadership opportunities. And so I do that either in a 2-hour version or a 4-hour version, depending on how detailed they want. And it's not a public speaking opportunity. In other words, I'm not giving a workshop on Tuesday at 3:00. This is completely one-on-one, or it could be, 1-on-2 or 3 if it's a small company or even a large company, and it's customized, totally customized to that individual or that company to meet their needs for both how much do they know and how much do they still want to know. Sometimes people have no idea, they're just starting out and they want the full boat, and others want just a refresher course, but it's customized to their needs and to their industry and to their customer base. I'll give them examples of, what if they're in the financial services industry, have they thought about this? Or sometimes I'll come up with ideas for an audience that they didn't even realize could lead them to customers through a referral base. And so they hadn't thought about talking to those kinds of people. So I'm just from being in business for so many years.
35 years of experience, knowing the conferences, what's on where, what the audience is like. It's that tried and tested experience that you've gained through just putting the time in.
Exactly. And so I do that for any industry at all. It could be, someone could be a consultant, they could be an author, they could be an attorney, a doctor, a nutritionist, doesn't matter. It could be business, could be non-business, could be medical. I've done it all. And then the second business is where large companies hire me. Like I mentioned, IBM, I've worked for Bank of America and Subaru and PayPal and so forth. And what happens there is the marketing department, usually the chief marketing officer or the head of PR, hires me to teach them how to either get speaking engagements for their companies, or in most cases, I do all the heavy lifting, as I call it. So they hire me to do all the work. I submit the proposals, I submit all the information that's necessary, whereas in the training, I teach them how to write these proposals. Here, I write the proposals, I do the submissions, I do all the follow-up. So that's a retainer business. And then the third business, which is a smaller part of my business, is the sort of traditional speakers bureau business. That's a speakers bureau division that we run. And in there, I have about 70 to 75 people of the likes of the kinds of people you mentioned before, people who have written multiple books, some bestsellers, some not, but they have expertise. They're what I call SMEs, which is known in the industry as subject matter experts, and they could be in human resources, they could be an expert in leadership, in information technology, in corporate strategy, in marketing, what have you. And those people are listed on my website as part of the Speakers Bureau. And while I don't do a lot of outreach for those people, I do help those paid speakers. Those are people who really want to get paid. I do help them if they need that service. I can help them position themselves in the marketplace by helping them create and advise them on what they need to create for their self-marketing, right? Because those people, it's all paid speakers, it's really about self-promotion. And there are many large speakers bureaus that are out there. So I have developed this just sort of small part of my overall business, which is these paid speakers, and the people that hire them are typically associations. They may be colleges and universities, or they're companies that are looking for keynote speakers. And I have relationships with some of these associations, and they come to me every year and they say, who do you have this year? Or we're looking for somebody with this kind of topic. And my website also, you can do a search and look through by topic and by type of industry and find those 70 people come up for whatever you're looking for if you're needing a keynote speaker. So those are the three main ways that I make a buck.
Brilliant. And yeah, that's like I say, there's a lot there for a lot of different people. So just obviously I get a lot of coaches, speakers, podcasters on my podcast and on my YouTube channel, and also then listening and following my content and connected on social media where I share everything on as well. So for all the people listening, if they're in any of those areas looking for any of those services, how do they get in touch with you? What's your web address and your details?
Sure. So my web address is, well, my company again is Markman, Markman, Speaker Management. And my web address is markmanspeaker.com, Markman speaker.com. And my email is just my first name, first initial, last name, smarkman@markmanspeaker.com. And when they go to my website, they can send me an email through the portal there, or they can just email me directly. My phone number is there as well. I'm happy to talk to anybody. Anybody listening to this podcast, I'm offering a 15-minute session at no cost to talk to me if they'd like about speaking in the world of speaking, and if they have questions, I'm happy to answer them as a way to get to know each other and as a service for being on this show.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that. And
Sure.
do you have a YouTube channel? I know you're on LinkedIn because we connected on LinkedIn. Is that your preferred social media of choice, LinkedIn, if people want to follow you?
Yes, it is. Mostly I'm on LinkedIn. If they Google me on YouTube, they'll be able to find me as well. I'm in the middle of redoing my channel, so it will come up under my name. Just be aware that there are a couple of other people who have decided to take my name, and two others, Steve Markmans, but they're in different professions. But yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach me. And I have done, if on LinkedIn they do a search, they'll find several other podcasts that I've done over the last couple of months, as well as articles that I've written on the subject of how to get speaking engagements. They'll find that on my LinkedIn homepage as well. Okay,
brilliant. And do you partner up at all with podcast booking agents? Because I've come across quite a few of those recently. I'm quite new to the podcasting world. I set up my podcast in March. Started doing YouTube podcasts in June, and started having dual chats from March to June. I was just speaking on my podcast myself, banging out the episodes and getting content. But then I've come across quite a few podcast booking agents, and I just thought, some of them would be good for you to work with, or maybe you could add a podcasting booking agency to what you're already doing.
Yeah, some of my clients ask me to recommend some podcasts, and I've quite frankly, I'm mostly recommending the ones that I know are good because they've interviewed me and I've seen the way they operate, and I like them. It's nothing better than a firsthand look. But it's interesting that you asked that question, Mike, because every time I have a little bit of time and I want to sit down and maybe find some podcasts that I think would be good for me to be on, because you're right, it is a great opportunity to demonstrate your expertise. Every time I do that, somebody invites me. Either they've heard me on another podcast or someone has told them about me, and I have a topic that is fairly different from the typical Speakers Bureau because of my handling of professionals on paid speaking engagements for marketing purposes. So I've been on 4 or 5 of them recently, and haven't really outreach yet in an aggressive way to others, but it's on my 2021 plan. Yes, I think it's a good idea. I think there's several legs of the stool of how to get your name out there and promote your company or your own brand. Speaking obviously is one. Podcast is another one. Writing articles is another one. And making virtual presentations. So there's a number of ways that people can get their name out there. Writing a book is always helpful.
Yeah. Well,
like I know you have.
I wrote a book recently, the beginning of lockdown, but I haven't published it yet because of some politics, relationship. It's my life story, and it features my ex-wife, and I haven't been able to speak to my ex-wife about it because of lockdown. So I just need to agree some things before I publish it. But I've just actually reached out with somebody who's going to do a collaborated book soon, and I'm going to do one with them. But I've got like hundreds of books in my head which I want to get out. The reason I'm podcasting is because I was blogging. I've been blogging for about 15 years. So, I was getting my voice out in a different way. But I wish I'd discovered podcasting sooner, because I much more prefer to speak than I do to type.
Yes.
A lot easier.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Plus I've been speaking for a living since I was 11. I haven't really been typing, like, you know what I mean? So speaking is more natural to me. Shutting me up is the bit that's difficult. But I've actually started, just for you to know, I did mention it off air a little bit beforehand, but I'm looking to set up my own podcast booking agency, because I've got a mastermind full of podcasters. They're also coaches and speakers and various different people. But quite a lot of my friends and contacts and associates are podcasters. So I can get people onto, probably somewhere in the region of 10 podcasts straight away, just by me telling people, here's a good guest for you. So I'm actually thinking about setting up an agency, because I do a lot of marketing for all of these podcasters, and they're all part of my mastermind. But I'm thinking about charging something like an administration fee just to get people on 10 unpaid for podcasts. But it saves them having to go hunting for those podcasts. It's just like a package of, here's 10 podcasts, here's the contacts, speak to them and set yourself up with 10 speaking gigs. And they're free speaking gigs on a podcast. I'm just charging an administration fee, excuse me, just for making that arrangement and for leveraging my connections over the time.
Yeah, sounds good.
So I'll keep you informed of that, because, like I say, anyone who's looking to increase their profile, the good thing about my podcast is Mastermind, and about, therefore, this excuse me, this 10 podcast offering, is that they cover all of the globe as well. So it's good for people who want to get their name out and about in different parts of the US, different parts of Europe, and also over in Australia.
Excellent. Yeah, I spoke to someone through another networking event from Australia, which, I spoke to someone last Friday from London, and then 2 weeks before I spoke to someone from Australia. And with the magic of Zoom, it makes connections much easier. I would, between the time difference and everything else, and the cost, I probably wouldn't have spoken to this gentleman. He was the CEO of a up and coming pharmaceutical company. They're working on some new medicines that they're trying to bring to market, and then he's trying to get some speaking engagements once they get approval to talk about the technologies that went into it and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of opportunities internationally that you can take advantage, and as can I.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Well, we'll have to have a talk off air about some of the different ways that we can work together. I don't mind putting some of it on air, but when it gets start to talk a bit of business, I always think it's respectful. Maybe do a bit of business, not in the public domain, if you like. I myself, I'm an open book. I'm happy to do business in front of anybody, really, because I am a pretty open book. I'm very direct. I say it how it is. Not everybody's like that, and I think just to show people respect is always good to have some business conversations off air.
Agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, but it's been wonderful having you on, and
thank you.
And getting to find out a bit more about you and what you do, etc. Just tell us a little bit about yourself as a person. What do you like doing? What's your hobbies, or what are you into, that sort of thing, so we can get a bit of flavour for who you are.
Sure. It's hard to answer that question. I haven't been out of the house since March 11th. I'm kidding. It's not much further from the truth, though, because I have not been to too many places where I didn't have to be. But I have a family. I have a wife and 2 kids in college, and I enjoy them. That's probably the thing that I enjoy the most. We go on, even though they're getting older, they still like going on vacations with us, and actually went to Disney World as my last vacation. Last time I was on a plane last December. Even though they're both in college, they still like it. And I'm a big sports fan. Probably, my best thing to do. I like going to sporting events, which is something that I definitely miss. Been a big baseball fan, as a lot of people here are in the States. Although for you folks in the UK, I also like soccer. My father was from Europe, and he played soccer when he was a kid, so he got me interested in it. I enjoy writing, and have not written a book, but I write a lot of articles, and I still think there's a book in me as well, although it's probably going to be a children's book if it ever comes out of my brain. I've got some ideas.
Yeah, brilliant. And yes, lots of people seem to write children's books. I don't know why, but I think you definitely got a speaker book in you as well, an advice or a memoir. You packed a lot in and all of that.
Yeah.
Which part of Europe was your ancestry from? Your father?
Yeah, so my parents are both from Eastern Europe, Russia, Poland, that area. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. I've been to London several times and traveled through southern England. And my son went to his first year in college. He went to he studied in London. So
okay, so yeah, you mentioned you visited London. So Americans especially love London because of the tradition and the history and that sort of thing. Was that something that you enjoyed too?
Yeah, I did. Although I found it somewhat akin to a quieter New York. I grew up in New York City. So it's a good thing because I took a photo of a sign that I forget. We were somewhere near Kensington, I think, and it was a big sign that said, I can't remember exactly, but it was something to the effect of no horn honking in this neighborhood. So it's something that in New York City would be torn down in about 5 seconds. So I like the civility that I find.
I was going to say, probably densely populated. It's probably not that different to New York. It's just the people are a bit more politer, so it'd be a much environment,
exactly. But based on what you told me off air, I definitely need to see the rest of the UK and visit Wales and Scotland and so forth.
Yeah. People like going a bit further out of London because you get into the countryside and more rural areas, and the air is better. And if you think London's a lot quieter than New York, then get to some parts of Scotland and Wales and Ireland. A lot of Americans love going to Ireland, and beautiful scenery. It's very similar to like Wales is very similar to Hawaii, which is part of the states I've been to, because it rains a lot. The only difference is Wales doesn't get sunny, and Hawaii gets it gets hot as quickly as it gets wet. But they look very similar. They're very green, luscious places full of trees and bushes, and a lot of people come to Wales to go hiking or cycling or walking, or we got some mountains that people like to walk up. So there's a lot of, they call them natural parks in the national parks in Wales, a lot of open areas where they're protecting the wildlife in and that sort of thing,
Exactly. Sounds good.
Well, brilliant. Okay. Well, it's been great having you on the podcast. So nice to get to know you as well as the business, and hopefully you won't be locked in for too much longer, because there's been some good news, about some vaccines.
Right. Exactly.
So hopefully it won't be much longer, and then you can pivot again on how
Yes.
you combine the new online technical world with the old world that you still love and remember fondly, how you combine them together.
Exactly. And thank you for having me, Mike. I really enjoyed being here, talking to your listeners, and also getting a chance to get to know you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day. For me, it's 9 o'clock, so my day's not going to last much longer. But for you, I guess it's probably more 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yes, a little bit more to go for me. That's right.
Yes. Okay. Well, have a great rest of the day. Have a lovely
Thank you.
evening, and thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you, Mike. Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye bye.